All right, so thanks everyone for coming for the first professional development lunch talk of this semester. This topic is going to be on REUs, research experiences for undergrads, all the NSF ones, and just the other ones, the internship options that are available. So let me share this presentation. Awesome, okay. So just a brief kind of overview of what our schedule is going to be. I'm going to give a very kind of brief overview of what the different opportunities are. But to really make use of the time, we want to spend a lot of time talking to the 3 students that are here who have actually done the internships and gone through the process, successfully completed them, and just rocked the whole thing. So Lara Kamal, she's a Goldwater scholar and did the CERN summer program this past semester. Natasha Latouf, who is off video because her internet is sketch, and she did the OSCA USRP, I think, several summers ago. And then Carly Solis, she did an internship at the Airspace Museum 2 summers ago, right? Okay, yeah. And so they're going to be great to talk about. So while there's a bunch of information on these slides, I'm going to be glossing over some of the nitty-gritty details and just posting these for more information later on. And there's tons of links in here for you to take a look at in more detail when you're interested. So before we start talking about research outside, I especially want to talk about research at GMU because it's often a very good idea to start with something at your own hosted institution because it's more comfortable and you're working with faculty that you already know. And so we have a bunch of research topics here, and we went over this a lot last semester too. There was one whole session that we had that was all on research available here. And particularly if you're interested in material science or condensed matter, several professors came and mentioned research topics they have and research projects they have available for students that they're actively looking for. So if you're interested in that, I definitely recommend you take a look at that old slide. The link is on our website. And we also have, by virtue of being close to the nation's capital, a lot of national labs around us. And many students have done, both undergrad and graduate, have done research through faculty collaborators or just through civil servants that wanted to work with you at these different labs. So we have the Goddard Space Flight Center. I actually did a research project there. The Naval Research Lab and Naval Observatory, those are both in DC. And then NIST is also in Maryland with Goddard. And so the main opportunities I'm going to be talking about today are the NASA internships, the NSF Research Experiences for Undergrads, or REUs, the GMU OSCA Undergraduate Scholars and Researchers Program, and the Smithsonian opportunities, and also the summer research at CERN. So before I go into that, I just want to give a very brief overview of what people are going to be looking for. And I've talked to a bunch of people that I know that actually look at applications for students for these programs. And the content is kind of look at 4 main things, and it's somewhat in this order. So first, they want to see academic preparation. They want to see if your technical background has helped prepare you for this experience. Like, what classes did you take and how did you do in all of them? And so they also want to look at your research experience. This is where it's also really helpful to have experience at your home institution beforehand. Because instead of just saying kind of what you're interested in, you can say, I worked in Karen's lab, or I studied atmospheres with Mike, and they can see that you have experience in this ahead of time. And you already kind of know generally what research is like, and there's less of a culture shock switching from classes to research. And they're also looking at extracurricular activities, leadership roles, independent learning. Particularly when dealing with things with NSF, they're going to look for contributions to equity inclusion because they have a broader impact goal. It's not required, but it definitely helps. And the main thing we're looking for with this is to see, are you self-motivated? Are you able to, when you sign up for something, are you going to follow through on it? Do you have this extra added passion? Basically, can you be independent and lead yourself or lead other students? And then finally, looking at program alignment. Basically, why do you specifically want to work at the site that you're applying to? Because many times undergrads are told you should do research because it's good for you. And so a lot of people will just look for research, just kind of grabbing at whatever they can. But you really have a much more meaningful experience, and you get a lot more out of it when you actually are doing a project that you care about, and you're not just doing something to do it. And so they really want to look for people like that. So starting with the NASA internship, the main link is here. There's fall, spring, and summer issues, and it's available for a wide range of high school up to graduate level. Typically, high school and lower undergrad are more kind of the media, journalism, PR kind of thing. But then as you go into the higher levels, you really get into the more science projects. You're going to be guided by a mentor at a NASA facility. The one closest to GMU, if you want to stay nearby, is Goddard Space Flight Center. And we have several alumni that either are there right now as postdocs or that did their PhDs there. And so we have several contacts that we can get you into, we can introduce you to if you're interested in that. Most interns, like for this one, receive a stipend award, as they do for, I believe, all of the ones that we're talking about today, because they kind of want you to treat it like a job. They want you to basically spend your 40 hours a week that you would spend at a regular job doing research instead. This is only available to US citizens, but if you are an international student, they do have a separate thing for you to apply to. And as far as how to apply, they want you to pick a project. You don't have to. You can do that right here. But like I said before, due to the program alignment, it does increase your chances because they know that you're applying to something that you're particularly interested in, as opposed to just whatever. The application is pretty standard. They want your experience, whether it's scholastic or research, skills, writing prompts, school transcript, letters of recommendation. All of these are pretty standard, and I'm going to kind of say them through all of it. But and then they also have a video guide right here that's really useful in kind of guiding you through the process. Then we have the NSF Research Experiences for undergrads. The main site is here, but there's actually a more helpful site that's going to be on the next slide. This is a 10 to 12-week research program, and the applications are going to be due pretty soon for the summer program, which is definitely the most common and the most popular. And this, instead of being guided by a NASA civil servant or postdoc, you're going to be guided by a faculty member or staff science at an REU site, which is typically a national lab or university. And these are, same thing, get a stipend, and this is open to US citizens or permanent residents. So for here, you're going to search, you want to search for a site at this website here. It is a huge list, so it can be a little bit overwhelming when you first look at it, but there's different ways that you can kind of narrow it down. And while there is these applications here, some REU sites have started to use what they call it the Common App. I just learned that last week. So there may be different requirements regarding to the number and type of essays that they ask for. Well, that will be on the site, but it might make things easier to apply to multiple. I did want to give a quick idea of what the topics of essays and personal statements were. For this, because this is specifically from Oregon State University, because that's where I know people that have a site there. But from what I've heard, these are pretty similar to other topics. And the first one basically is the why program relevance. Like, why do you want to do this? You have research experience in the second one. How are you prepared for this? And they specifically ask, because this is an NSF thing, for kind of the broader impact. Do you have experience in leadership, outreach, or DEIA things? How will this benefit not just you, the individual that we're providing this experience to, but everybody? One of the ones that I recommend you applying to, because it's a pretty easy application, and it's right at GMU, is the Undergraduate Research Scholars Program. It's offered through our OSCA program. I believe it's Office of Student Creativity, Arts and Research, something like that. And it's available to all GMU undergrads. You can do it the fall or spring as kind of as an addition to your classwork, or you can do it over the summer where it's just kind of a 40-hour a week commitment. If you do it during the fall or spring to help kind of counteract some of the things, you'll take University 495, and that has some weekly meetings. I took that because I had an Oscar fellowship in the spring, and it's a pretty easy commitment. Basically, they just want you to check in every week or so, again, to give some kind of presentations about, is this good? How are you keeping up with things? Do you have any particular needs that are not being filled? And they also have some professional development things where you can you can get interview experience, or you can get resume help, and you can apply for multiple semesters to continue the project if necessary. Same thing, and this also is really good starting place, because this application is very, very collaborative with the faculty member that you're working with, because they're going to be helping you write the proposal in most cases. And they're also going to be writing the letter of support to say that, hey, I've been through this application, the science checks out, it's possible. So it's definitely a really good opportunity. And several years ago, they had a proposal writing workshop, and there's a video of that right there to get more information. Smithsonian, like I said, Carly is going to take a lot more of this, but basically there are internships available at all of the Smithsonian sites. The one that most physics and astronomy students go to is the Air and Space Museum. And aside from just working in the exhibits, you also have you also have the opportunity to experience kind of the back end of the Smithsonian, where you're dealing with either public relations, the outreach, and the education initiatives that they have there. And typically it's a 10-week minimum, so similar to the other ones. And yeah, the application is very standard compared to the others. And then finally, we have the CERN. This one, definitely if you want more information, talk to Lara or just talk to Professor Phil Rubin, because he is kind of in charge of this for GMU. The main requirements for this is you want at least 3 years of full-time study at university. From what I've heard, they typically want you to have quantum under your belt because you're going to be doing research related to quantum. And basically, you spend your entire summer living and working in Switzerland. And so I have heard nothing but really, really good things about this, and Lara will tell us more later. And I'm just going to end with some resources for more help. Basically, our faculty has been really integral with helping me apply for things. And I know Joe Weingartner and Shabita have read every single one of my applications whenever I tried a personal statement for anything and provided really good feedback. And they're happy to do that with other students. Any student who's typically applied to something and gotten it, I know for me, at least, I am more than happy to give someone my personal statement as an example, give them my proposal for them to see and kind of model their own off of it. And also, just students that have done this can give very good advice, as we're going to hear kind of coming up. For personal statements, particularly, the Office of Fellowships will be great. They're not so knowledgeable on the science side because it's a university-wide endeavor. But when it comes to personal statements, they are really, really good. And Lara and Natasha have both used them and can talk a little bit more about that. I also gotten this link from several people saying that this is really, really good, and I read through it as kind of a starter to brainstorm personal statements. And we are having a Spectrum event on personal statements, not this week, but next week, Thursday afternoon. And so with that, I'm going to stop talking and pass this over to Lara, Carly, and Natasha. And so just kind of to start off with, you guys want to share a little bit about what experiences you chose and kind of what the process was like and how much and what you liked about it.
Okay, I can start first. Hi, everyone. My name is Lara Kamal. And as Jenna mentioned, I was an intern at CERN, and I also am a Goldwater scholar. So for me, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Goldwater scholarship, and then I'm going to jump ahead and talk about my CERN internship and that experience. So if you're thinking of applying for the Goldwater scholarship, it's a very tough process. It's a very long process, but it's worth it, because that scholarship is very, very prestigious and basically shows that you are you have a potential to become a research leader in the future. You get paid about $7,500 per year, but basically if you put that on your resume, it's great, especially if you're applying for graduate schools. That's something that they definitely look for. So the process goes like, first you have to, the campus has to nominate you. So basically you have to talk to Dr. Berger in the Office of Fellowship and basically tell her, hey, I am interested in applying for the Goldwater scholarship. And then she is going to ask you several questions, like you have to include your resume, you have to answer 2 short essay questions, you have to send her your transcript and also submit a pre-application on the Goldwater website. And after that, she's basically going to check that you are in STEM, you're a full-time student, you have GPA that's 3.0 or higher. So realistically, you need to have 3.5 or higher to become a Goldwater scholar. And once Dr. Berger checks all this information, you will most likely be nominated, and then you will work with her and the OSCA program together to write your essays. You're expected to have 4 short essays and 1 research essay and also 3 letters of recommendations. And I call this process campus review because you are not going to submit anything to the Goldwater Foundation. You are going to submit it to the offices, and they are going to check everything. They're going to check your letters of recommendations. They're going to check your essays. Your research essay has to follow a very specific format. So, the margins, the plots, the fonts on the plots. If yours is incorrect, you're going to be disqualified. So you have to make sure that your research essay really follow the format. And in your research essay, you have to talk about the significance of your essay and what you did exactly. So you cannot say, my professor and I worked on this problem, and we both, use this methodology, and we both created those plots. You have to basically have some ownership and show some ownership. So, for example, saying, I was responsible for designing and implementing the code. I was the one that created the evaluation metrics and made those plots. So this is a very important part of your research essay. And I think also one of the most important essays is the fourth short essay, which is talking about your if there's any social or economic impacts that you have encountered in your past that influence your education, positively or negatively. I think this is one of the most important one. You have to, if you're an immigrant, you have to show that, hey, I came from this country and I faced a struggle. Or if you're coming from, if you grew up having some struggles, you have to talk about that. And you have to really appeal to their emotion by this essay. I think this essay is one of the most important components. Personally, I talked about my experience growing up in Iraq. So talking about growing up during the war, and then migrating to Syria, and then living in the desert, and how there was nothing to do in the desert but to observe the night sky. And that's where my interest in astrophysics originated. So just talking about this story, I think that definitely, when the Office of Fellowship read my essay, they loved it, and I received many great feedback. And I think this is a really important component. And the submission, you have to, after you're done, you have to submit it, and then you will receive the notification of your decision by March 15th. And if you do get the scholarship, be prepared to handle the press, because people are going to come to you and ask you about your experience, and asking you all these questions, and write articles about you too. So that was part of the process too. Now I'm going to go ahead and talk about my CERN internship. So due to COVID-19, I did not go to Switzerland. I ended up working from home. And I was very sad about that, because my team and we talked about the places that we want to go and hike, and we had a lot of plans. But that being said, it was one of the best experiences I've ever had, even though it was virtual. So the most important part about applying to CERN is to actually talk to Dr. Rubin before you apply. So make sure you talk to him ahead of time, tell him that you're interested, and talk about your research experience, past research experience, and why you are a good fit for it. So for me, I talked to my research advisor, and I asked her to introduce me to Dr. Rubin, and she did. And when she introduced me to Dr. Rubin, I basically told him that I have a very strong computational background, and I can code in several languages, and I'm interested in particle physics, and I want to learn more about that, and I want to consider particle physics for my graduate studies too. And made sure that he knows my name, made sure that he knows who I am, because he's going to be the person who is selecting the students. And the application components, they didn't ask for a lot of things, just basically submitting an online application, 3 letters of recommendation, your transcript, and also an essay about why you want to participate in this program and what do you hope to get out of it. So for me, I basically talked about a friend of mine who has a PhD in physics, and his colleagues worked on the discovery of the Higgs, but he left CERN to pursue a career in software engineering, and then he regrets that decision. And for me, in my essay, I talked about how I did not want to regret anything in the future. And I also talked about, the component of what you hope to get out of it. I talked about connection, like being able to connect with scientists from all over the world. You meet many international students, many international researchers. So that was important to me. I think the essay component is important, but the most important part is that you talk to the professor and make sure that he knows you. So that's my recommendation. And also at CERN, once you're selected, you work on individual projects. So Dr. Rubin gives you options of the kind of projects you want to work on, and based on your background, you're giving a project, and he's going to tell you, are you okay with this kind of project? Are you interested? And for me, I actually chose material science project and or theoretical, but he suggested that I do experimental because of my computational background. So for those of you who don't know me, I actually have a previous degree in computer science. So because of my coding background, he suggested that I take an experimental project. So I worked on the NA62 experiment. And I love the project description, and I loved working on that project. And it was an individual project, and I had to meet with Dr. Rubin every day. And to me, the daily meeting was very important because it definitely kept me on track, especially when you're working from home. So just it was great to keep me on track. And also attending biweekly lectures. So this is your chance to meet other students, to talk a little bit about your research with them too. And in those biweekly lectures, we learn about particle physics, we learn about CERN, we learn about the Standard Model. They were very interesting. Dr. Rubin is so much fun to work with. And at the end of your CERN internship, you present your research finding at a CERN conference, and also you have to write a technical paper about your project so that if somebody comes along and wants to, for example, recreate your project, they can use your technical paper. And one more thing to mention here about CERN, a lot of their tools are in C++. So make sure you learn C++ and let Dr. Rubin know that you know C++, because you're most likely going to be coding. And if you're coding, you're going to use CERN's tools. Yeah, so that's it. That's what I have on my end. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask.
Tasha or Carly, do one of you want to go, and then we can do the questions at the end?
I can go. So CERN sounds very intense, but it sounds really cool. On the flip side, the Smithsonian, they're pretty laid back. I mean, it is a pretty prestigious institution, but the way that their whole application process goes and the actual internship itself is really fun. So for example, when I went through my application process, it was everybody who's applying is a student at various levels, and they know that. So you want to talk about, what is it that you have that you can bring that the institution can benefit from? And this is for every Smithsonian, all 19 buildings. So I specifically wanted to work at the National Air and Space Museum because my major was astronomy. And so that was where my main interest was. And I was able to talk about the different courses that I had taken, which meant that I had knowledge to share or to build upon, help other people build upon at the institution. I also got the choice of selecting 3 different types of projects that I would want to be on, or 3 different departments. The one that I was selected for was my top choice, which was the Astronomy Education, where we do a lot of outreach, but also planning and helping middle schools in the DC area, like helping them build their field trips and stuff like that so that they can come see all in their see all the things that like go with what they're learning in school. One other thing was that my mentor, she actually told me that she doesn't look at the transcripts. Yes, they are required to be submitted and they are important, but they also know that the people who are applying are very much qualified academically. And so what she wanted to see was, who are these people? And that's where the personal statement and the letters of recommendation really came in. She would do a blind reading, so she didn't want to know who anybody was, if she recognized the name or anything like that. She's like, no, I just want to see who this person is. She would choose her top 3, and from there she would just narrow it down until she made her selection of the student that she wanted to take on. And so my recommendation for that would be yourself in your personal statements. Let your personality and your passion shine through, because that's what they really want. They want somebody who wants to be there, not just somebody who's doing it because they think they should be doing something. So it was really cool to be part of a team that wanted to, you know, educate other people just about astronomy. My project was to, well, I kind of had 2 projects. My main project was to create a planetarium show for the museum. And I actually got to involve a little bit of my own culture in a way into it. So my show was on astronomy in Chile. I'm not Chilean, I'm Salvadorian, but the but there is a huge array of telescopes down in Chile, and we don't really get to talk about things that happen in the southern hemisphere up here because we're so involved with our own thing. But what I wanted to do with my planetarium show was also allow more people to have access to learning about space. So I made a bilingual show. It talked about what ancient astronomy was like for the Incas, and then went into what radio astronomy is and talking about all the different discoveries that we've made. And so then I also wrote up a whole script in Spanish, going over the same thing. We were able to invite middle schools, students that at home, their primary language is Spanish. They were able to bring in their parents. Everybody was able to understand what was happening. We also have faculty there that also are, they speak Spanish. They're fluent in the language. And they were also able to take my presentation and present it themselves. And we've started doing this more. This was around the time that Hispanic Heritage Month, a little bit before that was happening. So we were planning a lot of different things that involve getting more, being more inclusive with Hispanics. The other part of my project was to run the observatory outside of the museum. I don't know if, well, if you haven't been to the National Air and Space Museum when COVID isn't happening, I do recommend checking out the outside part of the building where there's a little dome, and that's where we have the main telescope to do solar observing. So there, I had already known how to run telescopes, both from working at GMU's observatory and doing some work at the Air and Space Museum before. So from there, I was able to help the volunteers that were coming in to run the observatory, just showing them like, okay, this is what we do, make sure everything runs smoothly. And so programming, not coding, but programming like that was really important. So that required a lot of public speaking experience, and including things like your skills, like what can you bring. Again, that's huge for the whole application process, because they'll look into that. They'll say like, okay, well, why don't we talk about a project that we could work on together? You can bring your own idea, or you can talk with your mentor about what kind of project you want to do or what your interests are, and you can come up with something together. If you have questions about the Smithsonian, I'm happy to answer them. I can only speak for the National Air and Space Museum, but the application can be for any of the 19 buildings that there are.
Thank you so much, both of you guys, for all that information. I definitely had an easier experience than both of those processes. So I applied for the OSCA funding. I applied for the summer intensive. So as was mentioned in the slides, there are two different formats that you can apply to OSCA for. You can apply for the summer intensive, which is 40 hours a week. It's a full-time job and you get a $4,000 stipend. But some of that money is earmarked for any materials that you may need. So if your advisor needs to buy any materials for the lab work, if you're doing experimentation, that kind of thing, there's $500 of that $4,000 that's earmarked for your expenses in that regard. There's also the spring or fall version of OSCA, which is 9 hours a week, so a little bit less than a part-time job, and you make $1,500. So doing it during the year makes life a little bit easier for juggling everything. But as I said, I did the summer intensive. I didn't do the one during the year, so I can speak to that. So I had already been working with my advisor, Dr. Peter Plavchan, for a year previous to me applying for OSCA. So when we applied there, we sat down, we spoke about what project it was that I was going to be applying for, what exactly I was going to be doing, and laid out the timeline. Part of the OSCA application is that you have to lay out the timeline for your project and tell them, like, week by week, a breakdown of each week what you're going to be doing. It's not set in stone. You don't have to be doing exactly what you said. They understand that science is science and you can experience massive setbacks that are completely unforeseen to you. But the important thing is that you have a plan in place so that they know approximately each week what you should be doing. Every week on Wednesdays, there was also a 3-hour lecture. So you would go and they would teach you about science writing, presentation, and then there were some days that had set time for you to discuss your project with other students that had also received the OSCA intensive. So my year, there were about 50 people that had received it. You can apply as part of a group of people. I actually met a group of students who had applied together for the OSCA intensive and had read it, and they all split the stipend and they were actually going to use it for their project, which was I think the music of Vietnam, and they actually went to Vietnam and did a study on the music there. So it's very multidisciplinary. So the chances of you finding someone that's even within the same field as you can sometimes be slim to none. Most certainly you are the only person working on something similar to your project. But talking to other people, once a week, other students that have that different view whenever you're stuck could be immensely helpful, because you find yourself explaining the basics of your project and you find out what was wrong with your higher level part of the project. It's because you missed the foundation. And you discover that. I discovered it personally several times while I was explaining my project to others. At the end of the summer, there is an OSCA student celebration where you make a poster of your work and you present this poster in the mix at GMU. And it's an open invitation to all of Mason to attend, since it's in the summer, right at the beginning of August. Not too many people attend besides your advisors and anybody that's related to other projects, but it's a good way to make connections and to add your first poster presentation onto your resume without having to travel for it, without having to find a place and get accepted to present any posters. It just comes as part of the program. As part of receiving an OSCA fellowship, either through the summer or spring or fall, you also now get access to an OSCA travel fund. So you still have to apply for those travel funds, but they can give you up to $800 for international travel, or I think up to $600 in national travel. That number varies based on where it is that you're going and what you need, but by virtue of having been in OSCA before, you can apply for that funding and help offset the costs of going to a conference. Using OSCA also gives you a lot of publicity for yourself. They publish articles about each student that gets OSCA, and you write a little bio about yourself and about your project, and it does get posted to official Mason forums. So that's also something that you can list on your resume. And it puts you in touch with a lot of faculty that you might not have been able to get in touch with, or getting connections at other organizations through either your advisor or your project, or from the leaders of OSCA. The woman who runs it now is actually a biologist by trade. So everybody that works for this organization is very involved with the scientific process for any discipline, and they're always available to help you with what you need. I will say that if you got OSCA previously, it can be more difficult to get it in semesters following. OSCA does try to spread out its funding amongst as many students as possible that apply. So if you are a repeat applier, there's a higher chance that you won't get it, so that they can provide work to other students. The benefit here, though, is that if you've been doing good work through OSCA and you were getting paid to do that work, and either with an advisor you were already working with, or a new advisor that now sees your work ethic, you can make your way into other sources of funding, whether that is through applying for external sources of funding using your new project that is now more fully developed and looks better on a resume, or through your advisor who can apply for funding on your behalf, which is what happened to me. The application process included an abstract, as I said, a timeline, a budget breakdown. When I say a budget breakdown, I mean you had to say, I'm paying myself $10 an hour for 40 hours a week for this many weeks. And you had to write it out how much you were paying for yourself and how much you were going to use for external needed resources like lab equipment, for instance. Throughout the summer, you will also be expected to do a couple of writing projects that you do have to turn in for a grade, but you do have to turn them in for all of the Wednesday lectures. They give you your stipend in 3 checks spaced out at the beginning of the summer, the middle of the summer, and the end of the summer. And your attendance is required to get the full stipend by the end of
I think we're losing you, Natasha.
Connections.
I think we're losing you a little bit. Yeah, well, I think you're back now, though.
Hello?
Hello? Okay. I think we're going to questions. Can you hear us?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, now I can hear you guys. Yes, so I found the process very useful. It was great to be paid for my research work. That was the first time that I had been paid to do that. And, it gives you the opportunity to really know that that is something you like doing. It gives you the experience of being a researcher full time as your job, because that's all for most people, that's all you're doing that summer. So it allows you to get a glimpse of, this is what life as a researcher would be like. Is this really what I am interested in, or do I need to start looking for something else? It's also a great award to put on your resume. You can start to build off of that award. I
think we're losing you again.
Okay.
This is why video's off.
Yeah, this is why my video's off. Sorry, guys. My internet is legendarily bad. Yeah, so I would very much recommend the OSCA program. The important thing is to make sure that you have like a very good idea of what it is you're going into that summer to do. You can't really just say, I have this advisor and I'm sure we'll figure something out on the way. You have to have a fully planned project with an advisor who's willing to take you on and take on that time over the summer. And those applications are due, I believe, in either February or beginning of March. So if somebody is interested in applying for this summer, I would definitely recommend starting to get in touch with advisors now and see if anybody is willing to take on a student over the summer, if this is something they want to help you with,
especially if this is for a project you had not done before, you are really going to be reliant on your advisor to help you write your application because they have the idea of what your project will look like. But if anybody has any questions, please submit it through the forum or just go ahead and ask.
Thank you, all of you. I really appreciated listening to your different experiences. I've been submitting like the anonymous question form link into the chat a few times. So if you haven't seen it, let me know. But we do have lots of submissions and lots of questions. So we'll see how many we can get through. I think this first one is for Carly. It's about the Smithsonian internships. So they want to know if there's any qualifications or experiences that the Smithsonian internships specifically are looking for that might be different than a traditional REU application or experience than those folks might be looking for.
That's a really good question. I would say that the experiences are probably going to be similar. Like, are you doing well in your classes? I know I said my mentor does a blind reading, but that doesn't necessarily apply to every mentor. So, what level are you at? How well are you able to do whatever you're applying to? Because they do a wide range of things. Even if you're doing a physics major, you may also be interested in like PR. Can you do anything? Have you had any experience with like making videos or things like that? So I wouldn't say they're necessarily looking for specific like experience, but more you saying like, this is what makes me unique and a good fit for this position that I'm looking for.
And our next question is about coding. So do applicants need to know how to code before applying to internships or REUs? Anyone can take this question.
I would say that depends on where you're applying. For certain REUs, having some coding knowledge is definitely expected of you, but usually they will tell you, you will know by looking at what the project is, by looking at where you're applying to. If you reach out to the person who's running that specific REU, the person you would be working with, they would even tell you what they need you to know, whether that's, you need to know Python or you just need to be open to learning it. But I think that changes on a case-by-case basis. Some internships or REUs would be completely happy with you learning on the fly, and others you need to know what you're doing going in.
And for me, I'm going to talk about the CERN internship. You definitely need to know coding. Also, that depends on the project, but a lot of these projects use CERN's tools, which is in C++. So you need, before going in, you need to know a little bit of C++ to be able to do your project successfully.
I just want to add one more thing because they both bring up really great points, but also have an open mind. This goes for literally everything. An open mind to learning new things, because I know I did not know how to write any script on Digital Sky, which is the program that I used for making my planetarium show, but I learned it and my mentor was very supportive in that. So just learn that, or just keep in mind that you can learn new skills even while on the job sometimes.
Awesome, thank you. So this one is kind of a general question, but I think it's really important and a lot of people share the same one. What if I don't have any prior experience in REUs or research internships? What are my options and how can I make sure I have the best chance of being accepted?
I can go first. So this is actually a great question. So if you don't have any prior research experience, make sure you get one. And you have to, think about what you're interested in. If you're interested in astrophysics, or if you're interested in particle physics or any field, research the professors that do this kind of research and talk to them. A lot of professors are looking for students. So talk to them, work with these professors, have some experience in research with your faculty advisor, and then you might be able to even like have a project, do a presentation, even publish a paper. So this is definitely the first step that you need to do before applying to any kind of internships, because all these REUs and also the CERN internship, they do require you to have previous research background.
I can speak to Oscar. Oscar is meant to be an intro to research grant. So if you have no research experience, you can still get Oscar. It's not, you know, an end of the world thing for you, because Oscar is expecting you to not going in, depending on what level you're at. So I applied the summer between my freshman and sophomore year. Even though I had some research experience, it wasn't anything like what I have now, and they're expecting that. If you're looking to, like Laura said, do the CERN internships, to do these high-level REUs, then you need to have prior research experience, at least something that tells them that you are experienced with research, you know how the research process goes. Those programs are looking for someone to work hard all summer, and kind of have a grasp about the scientific process. Whether that's a good or a bad thing is up for debate, but that is what they're expecting of you, which is not to say you cannot learn on the fly. You 100% can, and you should. These are all supposed to be learning experiences for you. That's the whole point of doing research in the first place. But they definitely want you to have a little bit of knowledge going in, but Oscar is a great beginner to getting that first step.
Not to jump in to say, like I had in the beginning of the slides, GMU faculty, like Natasha was saying, are always open to it. And if you're taking on students, and if you're not sure who to talk to, or you want someone to make an introduction, you can talk to any of the Spectrum leadership. Joe Weingartner is on the call right now, and he got me with my first research experiences and everything. And he's very used to helping students with this.
So we have another Smithsonian question. What other types of projects are available at the Smithsonian? It's a general question, so
Okay, so for the Air and Space Museum, I can say I met a lot of interns in visitor services. I don't know if you guys have seen STEM in 30 before, but basically it's it's like a little mini series where people from the museum, they make these shows for the intended audience is middle schoolers, but it's for everybody. They're super dorky, but it's great. So you can help in making videos like that. You can help in the exhibits. So right now, the Air and Space Museum is going through renovation, so you can jump on projects like that. Like, okay, what do we want this exhibit to look like when we reopen? I'm trying to remember. We also did things with, let me see. Oh, right. So SEPs, they're the, I'm forgetting, the Center for Earth and Planetary Studies. So if you're really into planetary sciences, that would be the place to go. They do research on basically like the moon, Earth, Mars, things like that. They also do, let's see. I know that there's also this location where they help restore the items that they put in the exhibits. It's called Gruber, I believe is the location. You actually take a field trip to all the different Air and Space Museum locations, including that one, where they have all the old planes, all these like super cool things, and unfortunately you can't touch. So yeah, there's a lot. I think there's also a Women in STEM project that was my second choice. I knew astronomy was my top, but that was a very solid second. So there's a lot of different things, and it sucks that you can only pick from, pick three, but and then you have to choose just one in the end, because it would be cool to do multiple. But there's a lot of different things, and that's just one museum. I would definitely recommend checking out the other museums too, if there's other things that you're interested in outside of like astronomy and physics and aerospace in general.
Awesome, thank you. So we have an Oscar question. Can you receive internships or research credits for participating, I guess, either in the summer intensive or the regular fall spring Oscar program?
So I think taking the class you can take for credit. I did not use that option because I think I'm not 100% sure because I did this a few years ago, but I think it either affects your stipend or affects whether or not you get a stipend. I know there is a George Mason rule that you cannot get credit for research that you are also getting paid for simultaneously. So for instance, when you're doing your senior research, either you need to take a semester unpaid in order to do your senior research, or your advisor has to retroactively grade you on a past semester where you were not paid. So I think the credit situation is something you're going to have to look into. But always keep note of that GMU rule. You cannot be paid for the same period that you are also getting class credit for research.
I'll say for the spring one, when I took it, and this was many years ago, so this might be out of date now, but I was able to take the 495, 475, whatever the one that's in the slides that I showed. I took that and I was still able to get the 1,500 stipend. So there might be something different with that because it's not a full-time thing, it's part of your classes. But they also had a non-class, like a non-credit version too, if you were either over limit or something.
So we have another question that I think would be really interesting to hear from all three of you, if you can. How did your internship or research experience help you with your career goals?
Okay, I can answer this question. So for me, it was like a domino effect. Like once you get one thing, you'll get the next one. So for me, it was started with my research with the professor here at George Mason University. And then that led me to when the CERN and the CERN internship and then the Goldwater. So it's really a domino effect that you'll see, one success after the other. Well, and to answer the question, how did that help you with your career goals? Well, for me personally, I did not know if I wanted to do astrophysics or particle physics. So having that experience definitely helped me, maybe helped me, because now I'm even more confused because I like both. I really do like both. So that's why I decided to do astroparticle physics, two components of that. So it definitely will help you to know exactly what you want to do, build those necessary skills that you need for your future research too. And also establish connection. I mean, this is a very, very important part because once you have that connection with the professor or with the person that you're working with, that could be a student, a PhD student, once you're applying for graduate schools, those people might know other people who are in other schools, and just being able to talk to them will definitely help your chances in getting in.
Was someone speaking or was I just making that up? Okay, then that's fun. Zoom is being weird. So yeah, just to piggyback off of that, definitely the most important part of all of this, any REU, any internship, any research that you do, besides looking great on a resume, so it's good for grad school applications and all of your other coming applications, is the connection. As long as you have a connection, quote unquote, on the inside, you are more likely to get in. That's one of the most important things for getting into grad schools. Your resume can be absolutely incredible. That does not guarantee your acceptance. But if you have someone on the inside, if you have a professor that's seen your work, that's met you, that knows who you are, that knows what your work ethic is, then they are more likely to say, hey, I would like to take on this student. I would like to work with them. And that immediately makes your chances for acceptance better. Mostly because if a school knows that they don't have to pay for you, then they don't really care. But yes, it's definitely the most important part that this helps your career with, is having those connections and starting to meet your future colleagues and the people that are currently working in your field.
And I'll just add on to all of that. Laura, I think I'm in the same boat. I think I made myself more confused because outreach and education, they weren't really high on my list before, but ever since doing that internship, I'm like, okay, this is something I genuinely enjoy, talking to the general public, just having these conversations about space. And so my only thing would be, you know, if you're confused or you just don't know what you want to do, try it. Try whatever, throw yourself into it, try it, whatever opportunities may rise, because you won't know until you actually do it. You may think, you know, in your mind, like, oh, this sounds really cool. I think I would be really like good at it. But once you're in it and you find out like, okay, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I only like this little tiny bit of it, but I can find more joy in doing some other thing because I like this one part of it. So that's just kind of my thing about it. Like, you should just go for opportunities that you think you're interested in, and don't just say that, well, this thing sounds cool, so I'm just going to do this. Do a little bit of exploring.
Okay, and we're about out of time for any more questions. So thank you all for coming, and thank you to Carly, Natasha, and Lara for talking about your experiences. We do have these every week. I think next week, Kat, you're leading. It's on a TED Talk. I don't remember what the name of the Dangers of a Single Story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's going to be really, really great. And you should stop by for that one too. And I hope you're all having a good start to your semester, and we will hopefully see you next week.